Welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, where we talk with martial arts practitioners about their histories and the influence that their practice of martial arts has on their lives. You are listening to the free version of this podcast, which is abbreviated. Help support this program by considering to subscribe to us on Patreon, where you will get 4 full-length podcasts each month, 1 week before the YouTube release date. The cost is that of about 1 coffee shop coffee per month. Go to www.patreon.com/malmag to subscribe. That is www.patreon.com/malmag. If you would like to purchase single full-length episodes of the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, visit our Gumroad page at malmag.gumroad.com, and that is malmag.gumroad.com. This week I get on Zoom again to the United Kingdom and I connect to the industrial town of Shefield and I speak with Mark Black. He tells us about his beginnings in traditional martial arts and then how he discovered Jeet Kune Do and trained with some of the most legendary practitioners in the United Kingdom. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast. And this week I'm connecting to the UK again to an old friend of mine. In fact, somebody I've worked with many times when he's visited over here, and we've always had a good time. He's one of the 3 amigos that races to be the first on Dwight's podcast every time it comes on.
Absolutely.
Mark Black. Mark's from, well, it seems like the last many people that I've talked to from the UK are all from the London area, but you're not. You're from more north.
I am more north. I'm actually Sheffield based.
Sheffield.
Yeah.
That's what I'm like. I know I've been where you're from, and I just keep forgetting where. I went to Sheffield back in 1998 when, because I've got a college friend from Manchester, and the college friend really enjoyed boxing. So we would get together and work out, hold mitts for each other and stuff. And so when I went to do a summer study at the film school in Prague, I stopped by Manchester on my way home and hung out with him for about a week or so. And he was a big fan of that boxer who was popular at the time from Sheffield, Prince Nassim.
Prince Nassim. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up going to, I guess there was 2 gyms. There was like sort of the old, real crusty one that he had started in. Then, of course, there was the nice one they trained in. So we went to the old crusty one, which looked like an old factory to me. And so we went in there and they let us come in and do a workout with them and, do a little light sparring with them. It was actually pretty fun. I mean, obviously this Prince Nassim guy wasn't there, but the trainers and stuff and people were there. So it was a pretty cool experience for me, but it was kind of cool to see this very industrial city that also, I think the Full Monty came from, right? The Full Monty story.
Yeah. That gym is still exactly the same. It still looks like the Full Monty. Yep, it does.
That's
it still looks very much the same. That gym's the same. There's a Wing Chun guy just further down in another industrial building, actually.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
big butt industrial buildings there. That's the question.
Unfortunately, there's not many of those around now presently that are actually safe.
Oh wow! Wow.
Yeah, there's not many that are actually safe, or they've been made into retail establishments.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Because I mean, it's all like brick construction. I mean, to me it looks solid, especially if you're not in an earthquake zone. But like here, things get retrofitted in LA all the time, and they're like, we're going to take that down because now we're determining it's not too safe anymore. And you're like, okay, but then I realize how natural termites are to here, and I think a lot of it is a combination of either construction they say, look, that's out of date, for earthquake. Plus, the termites have probably had a good meal in the building for many years.
I don't. I think that you guys, to a certain degree, have actually got a good idea about if something's not being used, tear it down and put something in its place.
Right.
We don't really have that idea. We, if it becomes completely useless, we leave the building there until someone decides to do something with it.
we're just gonna collect eyesores. What a good idea.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Oh
I
gosh.
still see buildings that were there when I was like 5, 6, 7 years old that are
Wow.
completely not used now.
And they weren't used then either, right?
Exactly, exactly. Exactly.
That's funny.
But
Well,
Sheffield, yeah,
cool.
Sheffield.
Yeah, as a,
I am,
my
I am,
history
I am
there.
essentially 90 minutes away from London by train.
Wow. It's that fast. Wow, that's good. That's pretty cool. Dang. Well, tell us a little bit about how you got started in martial art training.
It's going to be quite straightforward. This Bruce Lee and the Kung Fu TV series, although that is pretty bad now when you look at it. Um,
Oh my God. It's the worst part is going back and revisiting the things you thought were so cool when you were so little.
yeah, yeah, and it's so not. And
Oh my
uh,
God.
yeah, not
I'm
that I was a
having
big
that
David
nostalgia
Carradine
run
fan
right now.
anyway, but
You remember the old Miami Vice television show?
oh yeah. You
Yeah,
can
I'm
actually
I'm
watch
having
that
that
on
nostalgia.
Discovery now.
Yeah, yeah, and on Prime. So I've been kind of going through and watching and thinking, man, this thing was like so slick and so like what would we say, stylish and stuff,
Yeah,
at that
man.
time. Looking out going, wow, okay. It's cool that all these musicians were in there. And it was sort of like taking the whole MTV
Yeah,
thing at the time. That part of it was cool, but as far as the actual slickness of it, because I mean it's like Michael Mann, right? And so we're all used to Heat and Last of the
yeah,
Mohicans and all the
yeah.
stuff. He's a brilliant filmmaker, but clearly this is kind of where he was sort of cutting his teeth early on too.
Yeah, and
But
I mean,
yeah,
looking at the first few episodes, I was kind of like, 'cause, I thought Miami Vice, okay, I'll give this another shot.
yeah.
Not seen it in decades, and it's not really politically correct either, is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was actually a
the
little bit thrown off by an episode that I literally finished watching. It was like the one, I don't know if you remembered, about where it's basically an immigration lawyer in the U.S. was hooked up with the Colombian consulate or something. They were literally stealing babies from mothers off of these
yeah,
buses and stuff right there, and then they were flying them in here. And one of the mothers hides on the airplane and gets in here, and at the end she finds her, baby 3 years later, in the hands of the rich white people and whatever. So the final scene
yeah.
is, she's gonna take the kid back, but the white people cry, so therefore she's like, oh no, no, you keep him. And I'm like, what the fuck is
What?
this? This is awful. Like, what a terrible ending to that. And I don't
Yeah,
believe it for a second, but yeah,
not
like
very
you said,
PC,
exactly.
not, not very PC. But hey, but hey, I'm old enough to appreciate. Um,
But I mean, it's
um,
kind of
yeah,
cool. You're like me. You're basically a white kid who was idolizing a white dude pretending to be a Chinese guy, and then another
yeah,
Chinese guy. And then for me, it was Jim Kelly and Black Belt Jones. So I was wanting to be a black guy, a Chinese guy, and another, well, kind of imitation Chinese guy. That's what I was wanting to be.
I haven't succeeded yet. I haven't
Right.
succeeded.
No, that's
I'm
yeah,
still way off. Still way
yeah,
off. But I mean, the whole kung fu thing, and literally, I mean, I was born in '71. Bruce went in '73. We had got Enter the Dragon in '73, '74. Um, and unfortunately, I managed. I hadn't even seen Bruce Lee move. I hadn't seen anything, but I was actually taken in by the poster for Enter the Dragon.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Same here.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I'm born in '69. I remember my third birthday, so I would have been what, 72. So I have memories of allegedly of the time in which he passed away. I just, as a I would have been three and a half about that time. I don't think I understood the impact of that type of pop icon. And I'm certainly 100% sure that I had not seen a Bruce Lee anything at that point. But I
no,
remember as a kid, there was a thing called Dynamite Magazine that would be in the schools.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
remember seeing it, in grade school. And, there's different things that I remembered seeing on television, but there was the iconic picture of him posing with the nunchucks.
yeah,
And it was saying, like, Bruce Lee lives. And this is obviously, by the time I'm in school, he's dead by that time. And I'm thinking, well, who is this guy? These pictures
yeah,
look really
yeah.
cool. No
And
doubt.
that's what was happening with myself. Yeah, yeah, that's
Right.
what was happening with
And you knew the
everywhere I
kung
used to
fu.
go. I just used to see his image, either whether it was in kind of like news agents on magazines, or whether it was actually flashes on TV, or even with books. Because I was never actually into what you'd call soccer. I was
Right.
never into soccer. So the only thing that related to me was what I saw from Kung Fu, or the on the waterfront, water margin, sorry, the water margin and Monkey. So I only
Uh-huh.
had those to relate to. Yeah. So I was never into the soccer or the rugby or the cricket or anything like that. It just related to me that I wanted to be like that guy. Who's that guy? And um, because of my background with my parents, my stepdad, they couldn't afford much, but what he did was he got me up to the local infant school's judo club.
Okay.
So that was the closest
Judo
thing
was
you
the
could.
first thing you started in.
Judo was the first thing that I actually laid eyes on. Yeah. And my brain didn't rationalize that it wasn't the Bruce Lee thing, because I'd
Right.
seen David Carradine with essentially a gi on.
Right. Right. And that's what they were wearing, was a gi. And you're like,
And
okay,
they were
good.
wearing geese, and so I related to that. So I thought, my brain goes, oh my god, I'm in that place.
Right. Right. Now, how old were
And
you
so
at this point?
there I was about 8.
Okay.
I was about 8 years old. Yeah, I was about 8 years old. Um, didn't get to grade, get to do anything like that, because the parents weren't actually. They were, man. It was like the 70s and the 80s. They weren't able to actually allow me to grade, and they couldn't afford it. So like
Uh,
literally. Yeah, I was there for the sake of being there. They could pay for the admin fee to get me in there, but beyond
right.
that, I couldn't. They couldn't afford to let me grade, so it was kind of like, yeah. So
Oh,
it's
here's
just
something for
deal
you
with
to
it as
do to
you've
get
got it,
you out
kid.
of our hair, right? And
Yeah,
shut you
yeah,
up about the Bruce Lee thing. But oh, you want extra? No.
yeah, yeah, precisely. And so as soon as my dad could actually get me doing it, he would, the days that the judo thing wasn't on, he'd get me doing some boxing down at the boxing club, and then um there was a Shotokan karate class around the corner from us, and so he
Wow.
took me down there on a Friday night. So literally, I started off in the traditional arts anyway.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah,
that sounds like actually quite a, I mean, variety, honestly, for the time period. Because I mean,
yeah,
your age, my age is pretty close, and I mean that's, when you start kind of thinking about stuff that's available in time periods, like now, there's a lot of things available. And one of the more interesting things I find with talking, especially to you guys in the UK, like I just we had Terry Valor on actually here.
yeah,
We and the amount of Chinese martial arts, he had some
yeah.
exposure to. That was like a really rare thing in the US. You could find a little bit here and there, but it was, stuff that had weird names, as, opposed to, there's like 1,000 kung fu's out there, and you're like, oh, I've heard of White Rain and Hung Gar and Hop Gar and Wing Chun
Yeah.
and all this, but the person, what kind of kung fu do you do? And they're like, oh, the seventh eyebrow of the fourth dragon, and you're like, what the
Yeah.
hell is that? Yeah, so it's just,
Yeah.
it was always really weird. But then, it kind of occurred to me, I'm like, well, wait a second, that's right, because Hong Kong was a British colony for the longest time.
It was.
Like,
It
so you
was.
had that, idea of so you had a lot more, like, probably straight up actual kung fu people in the migration into the UK from China.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you had that
Yeah.
available. Right, where, in the U.S. it was, yeah. I mean, we had the migration. Obviously, it's, as we know, kind of the Bruce Lee story, and those communities were a lot more secretive, I think.
Yeah, I
For
mean,
sure.
back in that day, it was ironically, um, back at that point, even the traditional karate schools were actually putting up Bruce Lee pictures
Yeah,
to
yeah.
actually entice people to come in the door.
Well, of
So
course, they know marketing. I mean, come on.
they just knew I was coming, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Wing Chun guys. It wasn't until like the '90s when the guy in Sheffield arrived. But it was Simon Lau that was actually in London that was
Okay.
doing the Wing Chun stuff. And
Wow.
so locally, I couldn't access that anyway until, well, yeah, '90s, 2000s.
Until you're
Um,
old enough to ride the train by yourself.
yeah, yeah, essentially, yeah, yeah. This is the thing. Um, I had a thing that got in the way. I trained traditional karate. I did a little bit of kempo with a couple of guys when my dad would allow. But when I got to 16, I had to have
Mhm.
my back corrected because
Oh,
it had a
really?
curvature on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's what they call scoliosis. So
Scoliosis.
I had a 90-degree curvature on my spine,
Wow.
and yeah, I found this because I actually tried to apply for the Marines.
I see. And they said, nope.
So
They said, nope, you
yeah,
got this thing going on.
yeah, you got this thing going on. I think you need to see a doc. So
Gonna
the
make you
next
fall
thing was
apart in combat. Like what?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There was no such thing as Iron Man at that point, so no,
Right.
I stood no chance. Stood no
Well,
chance.
what did they do for that for you? Did you have to wear a brace or did you have to
Yeah, yeah. I've got a false hip, and I've got rods holding my spine together with
oh,
bolts.
okay.
Yeah,
You're part
and
robot now.
I'm
Cyborg.
essentially RoboCop. Yeah, I'm essentially RoboCop, which my friends actually joke about quite a lot,
Oh,
considering the
they
martial art thing. Yeah, yeah,
called the fun guy to go through the airport scanner with.
yeah,
Your
yeah.
buddy sets off security all the time, so then you get questioned too. Like I don't know what he's got in his spine.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, and that was the case. My first two trips to the States to see you guys.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
that was the case. Yeah. So actually, my friend Andrew was not actually happy about the whole situation. He was not happy.
You got
So,
the extra security measures, the extra questioning.
yeah, yeah. Yes. So I spent 2 years in a body cask.
Oh, holy shit.
Um, yeah, man. Yeah. 2 years in a casky thing, and then I had to actually learn to walk again.
Wow.
So I had to learn to walk, move, do the whole thing. So like literally, the martial arts footwork that I had at that time period, that was me. That was my movement, and with the physio, that was how I actually got back on the feet.
Wow.
Essentially, yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
It's actually good.
yeah.
And how old were you when you had to do the surgery and
I was
all that?
16 when the surgery was done.
I see. So they were
16.
looking for are you start looking at military pretty young there then? Because I think
Yeah,
like in the States you have to
yeah,
be like seven, well, high school, so like 18 pretty much before they'll put you in there.
yeah. You can
You
actually
have to be
enlist
able
at
to sign
16
your
over
own
here.
rights away. See?
Yeah, yeah. I had a distinct path to go down prior to leaving school because the only thing I wanted to do was be in the military. So I had a distinct path, and so by that point, I also had this kind of like idea of how do I actually find this Bruce Lee character,
Right. Right.
and what's the path with this character, and ironically, my first understanding of Bruce and of Gurdan was the documentary that he did. for the TV. He did
For
The Way
the
of the
long
Warrior.
Way of the Warrior for the BBC, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's a good one
yeah.
that makes rounds. Almost pretty regularly on social media. You'll see that one put up
Yeah,
there,
and that
and
makes me feel old.
yeah. But I mean, it's really a good piece, actually.
It's a good documentary, yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
covers each art with sincerity and with purity. It's absolutely brilliant. But that was my first introduction, because on the I saw that at my uncle's on the
Mhm.
TV during the day, and it was Guridan that was actually on.
Wow.
And my first kind of like the first words that I heard was when he actually said the whole process of Bruce would say this would work, but not necessarily work on film. And I'm
Oh,
like,
right.
who's that guy? I need to be where that guy is. And I was talking about
Mhm.
Guridan. I need
Right.
to be where he is. And
Wow.
yeah, that was my first introduction to Guridan.
So you're a Shotokan guy. You've learned how to rewalk. You see this, and you're like, okay, now how do
And
I obtain that?
yeah, so how do I get to this guy now? It was actually I started on my JKD, Junfan JKD, Carly, whatever path.
Uh-huh.
In 1997.
Wow. Okay.
So I'd essentially got back to my fullest potential by this point, having to actually learn to walk and actually go through education again and all this other stuff, because I couldn't get into the Marines. So I had to re-educate to actually.
Now, Mark, how long did that take you? I mean, in English, we don't have ways of asking intelligent questions sometimes. I don't want to say, well, was that hard? Of course, it was hard, but how hard was it? It's almost sort of an insensitive question in that. But I mean,
Um,
how long did it take you kind of to recover
to get to
from that?
where I can actually do things properly, it took
Yeah.
me to 93.
Wow.
Yeah, to 93. So I'd lost about 5, 6 years there.
Wow. That's a
Yeah,
lot. Especially and you think, realistically, I guess if you're going to have some kind of surgery like that, you would rather be younger where you heal. So you're kind of in your prime healing years at that time too. So it's like even
yeah,
at that, it
yeah,
took 6 years. Wow.
yeah, yeah. And literally, I had a number of things going off at the time, and I put myself through education again to actually get some pathway for, well, making money. What do I go and do for a living now?
Right.
What actually happens now? Okay, so I can actually walk now. I've got my thing going on, and literally, I can get to a college, because we didn't actually get the internet until 1995, 1996.
Right. Right.
So I literally had to go into a library or a college.
And this concludes the abbreviated version of the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast. Please click the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell. Also consider subscribing to the full-length podcast at www.patreon.com/malmag, or purchasing individual full-length episodes at malmag.gumroad.com. Thank you for listening to this episode with Mark Black. Coming up next week, a children's martial arts instructor from San Diego, Amanda Peepgrass. Check out the Malmag store at www.martialartslifestylemagazine.com and click on the store tab. There, you will find a full selection of Timmy B's brand sticks for FMA and Krabi Krabong, as well as Timmy B's and Dos Manos t-shirts. Many more products coming soon. Also click on our courses tab to purchase online courses, right now featuring the course in the Dos Manos stick of FMA. More courses to come. This show is produced by Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine. Visit us at www.martialartslifestylemagazine.com and enjoy the free version of our online magazine with articles, a recommended schools page, and a worldwide events calendar. Music by Jack Al Relic. Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine and the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.